In the year 1527, in the crowded and restless city of London, a boy was born beneath dark winter skies. Few people could have imagined that this child would one day become one of the most mysterious men in English history, a scholar feared by some as a magician, admired by others as a genius, and remembered forever as the man who tried to speak with angels. His name was John Dee. England during his birth was a dangerous and changing kingdom. The throne belonged to Henry VIII, a king whose ambition and temper shook the entire nation. Religion was tearing Europe apart. Kings feared rebellion. Priests feared heresy. Ordinary people feared starvation and disease. In such a world, knowledge itself could become dangerous. John's father, Roland Dee, worked in the royal court as a gentleman server to King Henry VIII. Though not a nobleman, he moved close enough to power to understand how fragile it truly was. Wealthy lords could rise one day and lose their heads the next. The Tudor court was a glittering cage filled with suspicion. From childhood, John seemed different from other boys. While many children spent their days running through muddy streets or learning simple trades, John became obsessed with learning. He devoured books with an intensity that frightened even adults. Numbers fascinated him. Maps fascinated him. The movement of stars fascinated him most of all. At night, while candles flickered against stone walls, young John stared upward at the heavens. The stars appeared to him not as random lights, but as symbols, secret messages written by God across the sky. His parents quickly realized the boy possessed an extraordinary mind. England in the 1500s was not a place where education came easily. Books were expensive treasures. Universities were reserved mostly for wealthy men or clergy. Yet John's brilliance opened doors. As a teenager, he entered University of Cambridge, one of the greatest centers of learning in England. There, his life began to change forever. Cambridge during the Tudor Age was alive with intellectual revolution. Ancient ideas from Greece and Rome were returning to Europe after centuries of darkness. Scholars debated astronomy, philosophy, medicine, and theology with fierce passion. The Renaissance was spreading across Europe like wildfire. John Dee absorbed everything. He studied mathematics for endless hours. He learned astronomy, geometry, navigation, and philosophy. He studied Latin and Greek so he could read ancient texts in their original languages. He slept little. Some students later claimed he barely rested at all. Years later, Dee himself admitted he often studied 18 hours a day. But knowledge came with a cost. The deeper Dee traveled into ancient books, the more he encountered forbidden subjects, alchemy, astrology, occult philosophy, and hermetic teachings. These subjects fascinated Europe's greatest thinkers. To many Renaissance scholars, magic was not fantasy. It was believed to be a hidden science, a way to understand the secret laws of creation itself. John became obsessed with discovering those hidden laws. One famous story from his Cambridge years spread quickly through England. During a university theatrical performance, Dee designed a mechanical flying beetle for a play. The machine appeared so lifelike and supernatural that audiences believed real sorcery was involved. Rumors began spreading that the young scholar possessed magical powers. For most men, such rumors would have been dangerous. For John Dee, they became the beginning of his legend. By his 20s, Dee had become known as one of the most brilliant minds in England. Yet brilliance alone did not satisfy him. He wanted something greater than ordinary learning. He wanted ultimate knowledge. He believed the universe operated according to divine mathematical principles created by God himself. If those principles could be understood, humanity could unlock unimaginable power and wisdom. Numbers, in Dee's mind, were sacred. Geometry revealed the architecture of creation. Astronomy revealed the order of heaven. And hidden beneath everything was a deeper truth waiting to be discovered. During these years, Europe was transforming rapidly. Explorers sailed into unknown oceans. New continents were being discovered. Old religious authorities were collapsing. Knowledge expanded faster than ever before. Dee became fascinated with navigation and exploration. Maps covered his study tables. He calculated routes across dangerous seas and studied celestial navigation. His mathematical expertise became invaluable to sailors and explorers seeking new trade routes and territories. Many historians later believe Dee helped inspire England's future empire. But while the outside world saw a brilliant mathematician, another side of John Dee was growing in secret. He spent long nights reading ancient mystical texts by candlelight. He studied alchemy, the mysterious art said to transform metals into gold and reveal the secrets of immortality. He studied astrology, believing heavenly bodies influenced human destiny. He studied Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and ancient magical traditions preserved from antiquity. Most importantly, he became convinced that mankind had once possessed divine wisdom lost after the fall of Adam. According to Dee's beliefs, ancient prophets and patriarchs had understood the hidden language of God. If that language could be rediscovered, humanity might communicate directly with angels themselves. This idea would eventually consume his life. But before that destiny unfolded, Dee's reputation continued rising. He traveled across Europe, meeting some of the greatest scholars of the age. In cities across France, Belgium, and the Holy Roman Empire, intellectuals admired his mathematical genius. At the University of Paris, Dee delivered lectures so impressive that crowds overflowed the halls. Students stood outside windows just to hear him speak. Yet admiration often walked beside fear. In the 16th century, science and magic were not clearly separated. A man deeply involved in astronomy, alchemy, and occult philosophy could easily be accused of witchcraft. And England was becoming increasingly paranoid. Religious conflict intensified throughout Europe. Protestants and Catholics viewed one another as mortal enemies. Kings feared conspiracies. Common people feared demons and sorcerers. John Dee's unusual interests made him vulnerable. Still, his ambition only grew. By the mid-1500s, Dee had assembled one of the largest private libraries in England. His collection contained thousands of books and manuscripts covering mathematics, astronomy, geography, theology, alchemy, and occult studies. His home became a center of learning unlike almost anywhere else in the kingdom. Scholars visited him seeking knowledge. Sailors visited seeking navigational advice. Noblemen visited seeking horoscopes. Some visited seeking magical wisdom. Dee's fame spread throughout Europe. But with fame came danger. In 1555, during the reign of Mary I of England, Dee was arrested and accused of using astrology and sorcery against the crown. The charges were terrifying. At that time, accusations of magic could lead to imprisonment, torture, or execution. England feared plots against Queen Mary, and astrology was often linked to political prophecy. Authorities claimed Dee had calculated the Queen's horoscope to predict her death. For weeks, Dee lived under the shadow of ruin. He defended himself fiercely, insisting his studies were scholarly rather than malicious. Eventually, he escaped execution, but the experience changed him forever. He learned an important lesson. Knowledge could make a man powerful, but it could also destroy him. After his release, Dee became more cautious publicly, though privately his mystical interests deepened even further. Then fate placed him near one of the most important figures in English history, Princess Elizabeth Tudor. The future Elizabeth I was intelligent, cautious, and surrounded by enemies. She recognized Dee's brilliance immediately. When Elizabeth eventually became queen in 1558, Dee's fortunes transformed dramatically. The scholar once imprisoned under suspicion now became one of the trusted intellectuals of the new Tudor age. Elizabeth valued learning, astronomy, and political symbolism. Dee's expertise proved invaluable. One of his first great tasks was selecting the most astrologically favorable date for Elizabeth's coronation. To modern minds, this may sound strange. But in the 16th century, astrology was taken seriously even by monarchs. Kings and queens believed celestial signs influenced earthly events. Dee carefully calculated the heavens and chose the date. Elizabeth's reign would become one of the greatest in English history. And John Dee stood close to the center of it. Yet even while advising queens and helping shape England's future, his private obsession remained unchanged. He still sought ultimate divine knowledge. He still believed angels possessed secrets hidden from mankind. He still believed the universe contained a sacred language waiting to be uncovered. As the years passed, these beliefs would lead him into darkness, mystery, and madness beyond anything England had ever seen. For John Dee was no ordinary scholar. He stood at the crossroads between science and magic, between reason and mysticism, between heaven and hell. And soon, he would begin searching for voices from beyond the human world itself. By the time John Dee entered his 30s, England had begun to whisper his name with equal parts admiration and fear. Some called him the greatest scholar in the kingdom. Others called him a sorcerer. And a few believed he was both. The reign of Elizabeth I had transformed England into a land bursting with ambition. The young queen inherited a divided nation filled with religious conflict, political conspiracies, and foreign enemies. Yet unlike many rulers of her age, Elizabeth valued intelligence deeply. She surrounded herself with poets, navigators, philosophers, scientists, and strategists. Among them stood John Dee. At first glance, Dee appeared every bit the ideal Renaissance scholar. He possessed vast knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, navigation, engineering, and geography. Sailors preparing dangerous voyages often consulted him before crossing unknown oceans. Noblemen sought his advice on education and politics. Scholars traveled from across Europe to visit his extraordinary library. But beneath his scholarly image lived another man entirely. A man consumed by hidden truths. A man who believed heaven itself could still speak to humanity. Dee's home in Mortlake near London became legendary throughout England. Visitors described rooms overflowing with rare books, mysterious instruments, globes, maps, astrolabes, alchemical devices, and strange symbols drawn across manuscripts. For many people, entering Dee's library felt like stepping into another world. The collection was enormous for its time, thousands of books gathered from across Europe. In an age when books were precious and rare, Dee's library rivaled those of universities and monasteries. Yet what fascinated visitors most was not simply the size of the library. It was the subjects inside. Dee collected works on astronomy and geometry beside texts on alchemy, astrology, ancient magic, and mystical philosophy. To modern minds these subjects appear completely separate, but in the 16th century they blended together naturally. Dee believed all knowledge formed part of a single divine system. Mathematics explained God's cosmic order. Astronomy revealed heavenly design. Alchemy explored transformation within nature and the soul. Magic, properly understood, was not evil to Dee. It was the study of hidden forces placed into creation by God himself. He often argued that true wisdom required understanding both the visible and invisible worlds. This belief placed him dangerously close to accusations of heresy. England during Elizabeth's reign remained deeply religious and suspicious. Witch trials occurred throughout Europe. Rumors of demons and dark rituals terrified ordinary people. Even highly educated men risked destruction if their studies appeared too strange. Dee walked a narrow line between genius and danger every day of his life. Still, his influence continued growing. One of Dee's greatest contributions involved navigation and exploration. England dreamed of challenging the mighty empires of Spain and Portugal, whose ships dominated global trade routes. Accurate maps and navigation techniques became essential weapons in this struggle. Dee advised explorers preparing voyages into unknown seas. He studied tides, celestial navigation, cartography, and geography obsessively. Some historians believe he helped shape England's future vision as a global maritime empire. It was Dee who popularized the phrase British Empire long before the empire truly existed. He believed England possessed a divine destiny to become a great world power. At court, however, whispers about him never fully disappeared. Servants claimed strange lights appeared in his study late at night. Some believed spirits moved through his home. Others said he spoke secret languages no ordinary man could understand. Dee himself did little to silence such rumors. In truth, he increasingly embraced mystery. During these years, he became deeply interested in ancient traditions claiming that humanity once possessed sacred wisdom lost after the fall from Eden. According to these beliefs, Adam, the first man, had known the divine language spoken by angels. If that language could be rediscovered, mankind might regain direct access to heavenly knowledge. To Dee, this was not fantasy. It was destiny. He spent countless nights studying ancient mystical texts searching for clues. Hebrew traditions, Hermetic writings, Christian mysticism, numerology, alchemy, all became pieces of a giant puzzle. Yet despite decades of study, Dee faced a terrible frustration. Books alone were not enough. Human knowledge had limits. If he truly wanted answers, he would need guidance from beings beyond the human world. This dangerous idea slowly consumed him. At the same time, England's political world grew darker. Catholic powers across Europe viewed Protestant England as a threat. Assassination plots against Queen Elizabeth emerged constantly. Religious paranoia poisoned society. Astrologers and prophets became both valuable and feared because rulers believed celestial signs revealed political futures. Dee's skills made him useful to powerful people, but also dangerous. One rumor claimed he secretly acted as an intelligence agent for Elizabeth's government during his travels across Europe. Some historians later pointed to his strange signature found in letters to the Queen, 2 circles with a line beneath them and the number 007. Many believe this symbol inspired the famous fictional spy code centuries later. Whether true or not, Dee certainly moved within networks of diplomacy, scholarship, and secrecy. Yet no political mission fascinated him as much as the supernatural. As years passed, Dee grew increasingly dissatisfied with ordinary scholarship. He had mastered mathematics. He had mastered astronomy. He had earned fame across Europe. Still, he hungered for more. He wanted certainty about divine truth. He wanted direct communication with heaven. And eventually, he became convinced that only one path remained: spirit communication. At first, Dee attempted these experiments cautiously. He prayed intensely before beginning any spiritual work. Unlike dark magicians described in legends, Dee saw himself as a devout Christian scholar seeking holy wisdom. He believed angels served God and could guide humanity toward truth. But communicating with angels was not simple. According to mystical traditions, special rituals, symbols, crystals, and invocations were required. Most importantly, many practitioners believed a spiritual medium, someone capable of seeing visions, was necessary. Dee himself struggled to receive visions directly. So he began searching for others who could. Several mediums worked with him briefly over the years, but none satisfied him completely. Then, in the early 1580s, fate introduced him to a man who would change his life forever. A mysterious figure named Edward Kelly. Kelly was younger than Dee, charismatic, and deeply controversial. Rumors surrounded him everywhere he traveled. Some claimed he possessed genuine supernatural abilities. Others believed he was a fraud, criminal, or con artist. One disturbing story claimed Kelly once had his ears partially cut off as punishment for forgery. Yet when Dee met him, he became convinced destiny had intervened. Unlike previous mediums, Kelly claimed he could actually see and hear angels during spiritual sessions. For Dee, this was the breakthrough he had waited for his entire life. Together, the two men began conducting seances unlike anything England had ever witnessed. Inside candlelit chambers filled with incense, prayers, crystals, and sacred symbols, Dee and Kelly attempted to open communication with heavenly beings. Dee recorded everything obsessively in detailed journals. According to those records, Kelly would gaze into a polished crystal or black obsidian mirror while entering trance-like states. Then he described visions of strange beings appearing before him. Angels. The messages they delivered were extraordinary. The beings claimed humanity stood on the edge of great transformation. They revealed complex systems of mystical symbols, magical tables, and an entirely new language supposedly spoken by angels themselves. This language would later become known as Enochian. Dee believed these communications represented the greatest spiritual discovery in human history. Night after night, the sessions continued. Sometimes the angels appeared beautiful and radiant. Sometimes terrifying. Some delivered philosophical teachings. Others issued commands. Dee copied every word carefully, convinced he was preserving sacred revelations meant for mankind. But the deeper the experiments progressed, the stranger events became. The angels demanded secrecy. They demanded obedience. And eventually, they demanded sacrifices that would push Dee beyond the limits of reason itself. Meanwhile, outside Mortlake, rumors spread rapidly. People whispered that John Dee no longer merely studied magic. They believed he practiced it. His reputation transformed from brilliant scholar into something darker and more frightening. To some, he became known as the Queen's magician. Others called him a necromancer, a conjurer, a man speaking with spirits. And while England feared him, Dee himself believed he stood at the threshold of divine revelation. He did not yet realize how dangerous that threshold truly was. For the angels speaking through Edward Kelly would soon lead both men into obsession, scandal, betrayal, and madness. And the cost of their search for heavenly wisdom would destroy nearly everything John Dee had built. The partnership between John Dee and Edward Kelly soon became one of the strangest and most controversial relationships in European history. Inside Dee's home at Mortlake, long after midnight, candles flickered against walls crowded with ancient books and mysterious symbols. Heavy silence filled the chambers as Dee prepared carefully for each spiritual session. Prayers were spoken. Sacred names of God were recited. Incense drifted slowly through the air. At the center of the room stood Kelly. Before him rested a polished crystal or black obsidian mirror said to reveal visions from beyond the human world. Then the sessions would begin. Kelly stared deeply into the reflective surface until his breathing changed and his eyes seemed distant. According to Dee's journals, he would suddenly claim that spiritual beings had appeared before him. Angels. Dee listened with trembling excitement as Kelly described dazzling figures surrounded by light and fire. Some wore crowns. Others carried swords or strange books filled with unknown writing. To Dee, these were not hallucinations. They were messengers from heaven. Every word spoken during these encounters was recorded carefully in massive diaries. Dee believed future generations might one day study these conversations as sacred revelations. The angels soon began teaching them a strange and complex language. Neither Latin nor Greek nor Hebrew resembled it. The beings claimed it was the original language spoken before humanity's fall from grace, the tongue used by angels and by Adam himself in the Garden of Eden. Today this system is known as Enochian magic. The language fascinated Dee completely. The angels dictated unfamiliar alphabets, mystical tables, invocations, symbols, and elaborate rituals. Dee copied them obsessively while Kelly acted as intermediary between heaven and earth. The messages became increasingly complicated. Sometimes the angels spoke about religion and divine wisdom. Sometimes they described cosmic structures beyond human understanding. Sometimes they delivered prophecies. and at times, they terrified even Kelly himself. One night, Kelly claimed to see powerful beings surrounded by flames whose voices shook the chamber. Another session described visions of destruction spreading across nations. Certain angels warned of coming judgment upon sinful humanity. Dee believed he had been chosen for a divine mission. He began thinking of himself less as a scholar and more as a prophet preparing mankind for spiritual transformation. Yet despite his faith, doubts occasionally crept into his mind. Could Kelly truly see angels? Or was something darker occurring? The problem was that Kelly's personality differed greatly from Dee's. John Dee was disciplined, intellectual, and deeply religious. Though obsessed with occult knowledge, he sincerely believed his work served God. Kelly, however, remained unpredictable. He loved luxury, wealth, and fame. Rumors followed him constantly. Some accused him of fraud long before meeting Dee. Others believed he secretly practiced darker forms of magic. Still, Dee trusted him because the visions seemed impossibly detailed. And sometimes the revelations produced astonishing results. The angels revealed intricate systems of mathematics and symbolic patterns that appeared beyond Kelly's ordinary education. They described magical calls or invocations said to unlock spiritual realms. Dee became convinced heaven itself was guiding their work. Word of the strange partnership spread rapidly through England and Europe. Some powerful nobles became fascinated. Others became horrified. Visitors occasionally attended the séances, hoping to witness supernatural communication firsthand. Stories spread about glowing lights, thunderous sounds, mysterious voices, and spirits appearing during rituals. Whether these events truly occurred or not remains unknown, but belief in them grew stronger every year. Meanwhile, Europe itself entered a time of growing instability. Religious wars consumed entire regions. Catholics and Protestants slaughtered one another in the name of God. Kings feared assassination and rebellion. Prophecies and omens obsessed rulers across the continent. In such an atmosphere, men claiming communication with angels attracted enormous attention. Eventually, Dee and Kelly decided to leave England and travel across Europe seeking support from wealthy patrons. Their journey became almost legendary. In 1583, they departed England carrying books, magical instruments, manuscripts, crystals, and spiritual records accumulated over years of work. Dee hoped foreign rulers might help fund further angelic research. The pair traveled through parts of Poland, Bohemia, and the Holy Roman Empire, meeting nobles, alchemists, scholars, and emperors fascinated by mysticism. During this era, European courts were filled with astrologers and occult advisors. Many rulers believed magical knowledge could provide political and military power. One of the most important figures Dee met was Rudolf II, the eccentric emperor fascinated by alchemy, astrology, and occult science. Rudolf's court in Prague became famous for attracting mystics, artists, scientists, and strange intellectuals from across Europe. For a time, Dee and Kelly seemed perfectly suited to this environment. They performed seances before nobles and intellectuals. Kelly claimed angels appeared regularly. Dee presented their spiritual system as a divine revelation capable of transforming humanity. Yet beneath the surface, tension slowly grew between the two men. Kelly increasingly pursued alchemy and promises of producing gold. Wealthy patrons desperately wanted the secret of transmutation, the legendary ability to turn common metals into gold. Kelly hinted he possessed such abilities. Some even believed he had discovered the Philosopher's Stone. Dee remained focused primarily on spiritual knowledge, but Kelly's growing greed and ambition created conflict between them. Then came the most shocking event of all. In 1587, during one of their angelic sessions, Kelly claimed the spirits delivered a horrifying command. The angels ordered that Dee and Kelly must share everything equally, including their wives. The message stunned Dee completely. By this time, Dee was an older man with a devoted wife named Jane. He loved his family deeply despite his obsessive studies. Kelly too was married. At first, Dee struggled to believe the command could truly come from holy beings. Yet Kelly insisted the angels repeated the instruction clearly. According to Dee's journals, the spirits declared spiritual unity between the men required total sharing and obedience. For days Dee wrestled with the command in agony. If the angels truly spoke for God, disobedience might destroy their sacred mission. But obeying would violate morality, marriage, and common sense. The situation nearly broke him mentally. Finally, after desperate prayer and torment, Dee submitted. The exact details remain unclear, but historical records strongly suggest the arrangement occurred. The consequences were catastrophic. Whatever trust once existed between Dee and Kelly began collapsing afterward. Suspicion poisoned their relationship. Emotional wounds spread through both families. Soon after, Jane Dee became pregnant, leading to rumors and uncertainty about the child's father. The partnership never truly recovered. At the same time, opposition against them intensified across Europe. Religious authorities increasingly viewed their activities as dangerous heresy. Some accused them of summoning demons rather than angels. Others mocked them as frauds exploiting superstition. Even Emperor Rudolf eventually grew cautious. Kelly, meanwhile, drifted further toward alchemical ambitions and personal wealth. He became increasingly independent, seeking noble patrons without Dee. The great spiritual mission that once united them slowly unraveled. For John Dee, the collapse was devastating. He had sacrificed reputation, safety, and perhaps even his family, believing heaven guided his path. Now uncertainty consumed him. Had the angels truly spoken? Had Kelly deceived him? Or had darker forces manipulated them both? By the late 1580s, Dee's dreams of divine transformation were crumbling. After years abroad, he finally returned to England hoping to rebuild his life. Instead, he discovered disaster waiting at home. His beloved library at Mortlake had been attacked during his absence. Many priceless books and manuscripts were stolen or destroyed. In an age before printing became widespread, some losses were irreplaceable forever. The destruction shattered Dee emotionally. His library had been the work of a lifetime, one of the greatest collections in England. Now much of it lay ruined. Worse still, his reputation had changed permanently. The respected scholar who once advised queens and explorers had become infamous across Europe as an occult magician obsessed with spirits. People no longer saw him as merely a mathematician. They saw a man who tried to speak with angels, and perhaps lost his soul in the process. Yet even after betrayal, humiliation, and ruin, John Dee still refused to abandon his search completely. Deep inside, he continued believing that somewhere beyond the chaos, divine truth remained waiting. But the years ahead would bring loneliness, tragedy, and darkness greater than anything he had yet endured. When John Dee finally returned to England after years wandering across Europe, he expected hardship. But he was not prepared for devastation. The journey home had already exhausted him physically and spiritually. His partnership with Edward Kelly lay in ruins. The angelic revelations that once filled him with hope now haunted his mind with uncertainty. He was aging rapidly, burdened by failure, suspicion, and grief. Yet nothing wounded him more deeply than what he discovered at Mortlake. His great library, the treasure of his life, had been violated. Rooms once overflowing with precious manuscripts now stood damaged and scattered. Shelves had been emptied. Rare books were missing. Scientific instruments had vanished. Priceless handwritten notes gathered over decades were destroyed or stolen forever. To John Dee, this was more than robbery. It was the destruction of his soul. In the 16th century, books were among the most valuable possessions a person could own. Many manuscripts existed nowhere else on Earth. Dee had spent his entire life collecting knowledge from across Europe, building one of the greatest libraries in England. Now much of it was gone. Neighbors later claimed local mobs had broken into the house while Dee traveled abroad. Some believed treasure or magical artifacts were hidden inside. Others hated Dee's reputation and saw his absence as an opportunity. Rumors had poisoned Mortlake for years. People whispered that demons walked through the halls. Some claimed spirits guarded the library. Others believed Dee used black magic to control supernatural powers. Fear transformed curiosity into hatred, and hatred destroyed everything he had built. The loss shattered Dee emotionally. His journals from these years reveal growing despair. The once confident scholar who dreamed of unlocking divine mysteries now struggled simply to survive. Still, despite humiliation and poverty, Dee continued seeking royal favor. His old connection with Elizabeth I remained one of his few remaining hopes. Elizabeth had once trusted and respected him deeply. During the glorious early years of her reign, Dee stood among England's celebrated intellectuals. He advised navigators, scholars, and nobles. His mathematical expertise helped support England's maritime ambitions. But times had changed. England itself had changed. The late 16th century became increasingly harsh toward occult practices and mystical experimentation. Religious tensions continued spreading fear across society. Witchcraft accusations intensified throughout Europe. Even educated nobles grew cautious about associating too closely with controversial figures. And no figure in England seemed more controversial than John Dee. His name had become inseparable from stories of spirit summoning, angelic conversations, crystals, alchemy, and forbidden rituals. To supporters, he remained a brilliant philosopher unfairly misunderstood. To enemies, he looked dangerously close to a sorcerer. Even so, Elizabeth still showed him occasional kindness. In 1595, Dee received an important appointment. He became Warden of Christ's College Manchester in Manchester. The position offered financial stability and social respectability. Or at least it appeared to. In reality, the appointment became another nightmare. Many local clergy and officials disliked Dee immediately. His reputation preceded him everywhere he traveled. Some openly accused him of practicing magic. Others distrusted his unusual learning and foreign mystical interests. The atmosphere at Manchester was cold and hostile. Dee hoped to restore order and discipline within the college, but resistance surrounded him constantly. He struggled with poor health, financial difficulties, and endless conflict. Worse still, tragedy continued invading his personal life. His beloved wife Jane died during these difficult years, likely from plague or illness. Her death devastated him. Despite the strange and painful history surrounding their marriage, Dee had deeply loved her. Together they had endured years of uncertainty, scandal, poverty, and wandering across Europe. Now she was gone. The aging scholar found himself increasingly isolated. Many former allies avoided him. His magical reputation frightened respectable society. His finances collapsed repeatedly. And the dreams that once inspired him now seemed distant shadows. Yet through all this suffering, Dee never entirely abandoned his spiritual beliefs. He continued studying ancient mysteries late into the night. He still believed humanity had lost divine wisdom long ago. And he still hoped that somewhere, hidden behind the visible world, ultimate truth remained waiting. But age changed him. The confident young intellectual who once sought to transform human knowledge gradually became a lonely old man haunted by questions he could no longer answer. Did angels truly speak through Kelly? Or had he been deceived? Had God chosen him for a sacred mission? Or had pride and obsession led him into madness? These questions tormented him constantly. Meanwhile, Europe entered an age increasingly shaped by science rather than mysticism. Ironically, John Dee had helped create that future himself. His mathematical works influenced navigation, astronomy, and exploration. His ideas supported England's rise as a maritime power. Scholars respected many of his scientific achievements even while rejecting his occult beliefs. In some ways, Dee stood between two worlds. One foot remained in the medieval age of magic, prophecy, and mystical symbolism. The other stepped toward the coming scientific revolution. This made him difficult for later generations to understand. Was he a scientist? A magician? A philosopher? A fraud? Perhaps he was all of them at once. During his final years, stories about him grew increasingly legendary. Children whispered that he could summon demons. Servants claimed strange noises emerged from abandoned rooms in his home. Some believed he possessed cursed books containing forbidden spells. Others insisted he had discovered supernatural powers hidden from ordinary men. The truth was far sadder. By old age, Dee lived largely forgotten. The powerful courts of Europe no longer sought his advice eagerly. New scholars replaced him. New political struggles consumed England. The brilliant magus who once dreamed of unlocking heaven's secrets faded slowly into obscurity. Yet even in decline, his mind remained restless. He continued writing notes, studying texts, and organizing surviving manuscripts. Visitors occasionally sought him out, fascinated by his legendary reputation. Some came respectfully. Others came merely to stare at the old wizard. One of the strangest artifacts associated with Dee during these years was a black obsidian mirror originally brought from the Aztec world in Mexico. Dee allegedly used the mirror during spirit communication rituals with Kelly. Centuries later, the object would survive as one of history's most haunting occult relics. To believers, it represented a gateway between worlds. To skeptics, it symbolized obsession and delusion. To Dee himself, it may have represented both hope and regret. As the 17th century approached, England transformed rapidly around him. New ideas about science, philosophy, and politics spread across Europe. Rational thinking slowly challenged older mystical traditions. The world that had once welcomed astrologers and magicians into royal courts was beginning to disappear. And John Dee, perhaps the greatest magus of the Renaissance age, disappeared with it. Around 1608 or 1609, Dee died quietly, likely in Mortlake. The exact details of his death remain uncertain. No grand ceremony marked his passing. No monument celebrated his achievements. The man who once advised queens, inspired explorers, and claimed communication with angels left the world in relative poverty and obscurity. Yet death did not end his story. In the centuries that followed, John Dee's legend only grew stranger. Occult societies would later worship him as a master magician. Historians would debate whether he was genius or madman. Conspiracy theories would connect him to secret organizations, coded prophecies, and hidden knowledge. Writers and filmmakers would transform him into a mythic figure standing between science and the supernatural. And long after his body vanished into history, one question continued haunting everyone who studied his life. Did John Dee truly speak with angels? Or with something far darker? When John Dee died in the early 17th century, most people believed his story had ended. They were wrong. In many ways, his death only transformed him from a man into a legend. At first, England remembered Dee with discomfort and uncertainty. Scholars respected his mathematical brilliance but avoided discussing his occult experiments openly. Religious authorities viewed his angelic communications with suspicion. Ordinary people continued whispering tales about black magic, haunted mirrors, and spirits summoned in candlelit rooms. His reputation split into two separate identities. One was the respected intellectual who helped advance navigation, astronomy, geography, and mathematics during the Renaissance. The other was the mysterious magician who tried to unlock heaven itself. As decades passed, the second identity became impossible to erase. Part of the reason lay in Dee's own writings. Unlike many occult practitioners who kept secrets hidden, Dee recorded astonishing amounts of detail about his spiritual experiments. Thousands of pages survive describing seances, angelic conversations, mystical alphabets, magical tables, and visions experienced with Edward Kelly. These journals fascinated later generations. Readers encountered pages filled with strange symbols and unknown language. Conversations with beings claiming to be angels appeared beside mathematical diagrams and religious prayers. The documents seemed to belong equally to science and fantasy. And because the records were written seriously and carefully, many people wondered whether Dee truly believed every word. Most historians agree that he did. To Dee, the angelic communications were never entertainment or fraud. He genuinely believed he stood at the center of a divine revelation capable of changing human understanding forever. That sincerity made his story even more haunting. As the 17th century progressed, Europe entered the age of scientific revolution. Thinkers such as Isaac Newton transformed humanity's understanding of physics, astronomy, and mathematics. Ironically, Newton himself shared some similarities with Dee. Like Dee, Newton studied alchemy extensively. Like Dee, he believed hidden truths existed beneath ordinary reality. The difference was that science gradually separated itself from mysticism over time. Astronomy distanced itself from astrology. Chemistry replaced alchemy. Empirical observation replaced magical philosophy. As this transformation accelerated, John Dee became increasingly difficult for historians to classify. Modern minds prefer clear categories: scientist or magician, rational thinker or mystic, genius or fraud. But Dee belonged to a Renaissance world where those boundaries barely existed. During his lifetime, studying mathematics, astrology, theology, and alchemy together seemed perfectly natural. Many educated people believed the universe formed a unified divine system where spiritual and physical laws intertwined. Dee represented that worldview more completely than almost anyone else. He became a symbol of humanity standing between two ages, the mystical medieval world and the modern scientific one. Yet while academic historians debated his intellectual legacy, occult traditions embraced him passionately. By the 18th and 19th centuries, secret societies and mystical groups began treating Dee almost like a spiritual master. Organizations interested in ceremonial magic, Rosicrucianism, alchemy, and esoteric philosophy studied his surviving works intensely. The mysterious Enochian language especially attracted fascination. Practitioners believed the angelic system recorded by Dee and Kelly contained genuine supernatural power. Some attempted to recreate the rituals exactly as Dee described them centuries earlier. Others claimed the Enochian calls could open gateways to spiritual dimensions. Few occult systems in Western history inspired as much obsession. Among the groups heavily influenced by Dee's writings was Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, one of the most famous occult societies of the 19th century. Members studied Enochian magic as part of advanced mystical training. Through organizations like the Golden Dawn, Dee's influence spread into modern occult traditions worldwide. One particularly controversial admirer was Aleister Crowley. Crowley, infamous for his own occult practices and rebellious philosophy, viewed Dee's angelic system as profoundly important. He performed rituals based partly on Dee's records and believed the Enochian language carried real spiritual force. Thus, centuries after Dee's death, his work continued shaping occult thought. But his influence extended far beyond secret magical societies. Writers, poets, and storytellers found his life irresistible. After all, few historical figures possessed such dramatic contradictions. A royal advisor who spoke with angels. A mathematician accused of sorcery. A devout Christian obsessed with occult knowledge. A scholar whose search for divine truth led him into scandal, betrayal, and ruin. Dee seemed almost designed for myth-making. Over time, he appeared in novels, plays, films, television series, and comics. Fiction transformed him into everything from wise wizard to sinister necromancer. Some stories portrayed him as a secret defender of England using magical powers against enemies of the crown. Others depicted him as a tragic figure destroyed by forbidden knowledge. Conspiracy theories eventually surrounded him as well. One popular theory connected Dee to the origins of British intelligence services. Historians pointed to the strange symbol he allegedly used in letters to Elizabeth I, 2 circles and the number 007. Some later speculated this inspired fictional spy codes used centuries afterward. Whether true or not, the idea added another layer to Dee's legend: scholar, magician, and secret agent combined into one mysterious figure. Another enduring mystery involved Dee's missing books and artifacts. Many manuscripts disappeared after his death. Treasure hunters and occult enthusiasts spent generations searching for lost writings supposedly containing hidden magical secrets. Certain objects linked to Dee became almost mythical. Most famous among them was the black obsidian mirror believed used during angelic seances. The mirror itself originated in the Aztec civilization of Mexico before eventually reaching Europe. Smooth, dark, and reflective, it looked unsettlingly unnatural even centuries later. Visitors viewing the mirror often described feeling disturbed by it. The artifact survived into modern times, becoming one of the most famous occult relics in history. Crystal balls, wax seals, magical tables, and strange carved objects associated with Dee also survived in museums and private collections. For believers, these were sacred tools once used to communicate with higher beings. For skeptics, they were reminders of human obsession and imagination. Yet even critics admitted one thing: John Dee's life was extraordinary. He lived during one of history's most explosive periods of change. Empires rose and fell around him. Religion shattered Europe into violence. Exploration expanded humanity's understanding of the world. Science began transforming civilization forever. And through it all, Dee searched for ultimate truth with relentless intensity. That search made him both brilliant and tragic. Modern historians still debate important questions about him. Did Edward Kelly manipulate Dee intentionally? Did Dee experience genuine religious visions through psychological belief? Was Enochian language invented consciously or unconsciously? How much of Dee's reputation resulted from fear and superstition? No final answers exist. Perhaps none ever will. But maybe the greatest reason John Dee remains unforgettable lies deeper than magic itself. His story reflects humanity's eternal hunger for hidden knowledge. The desire to understand mysteries beyond ordinary life. The dream that somewhere, behind the visible world, greater truths still wait to be discovered. John Dee devoted his entire existence to that dream. And whether he was genius, fool, prophet, or madman, he never stopped searching. More than 400 years after the death of John Dee, historians still struggle to define him. That alone says everything. Most historical figures eventually become simple. Time reduces them into clear identities people can easily understand. A king, a scientist, a philosopher, a criminal. But John Dee refused to become simple. The deeper scholars studied his life, the stranger he seemed. He helped shape modern mathematics and navigation, yet believed angels dictated secret languages. He advised explorers who expanded human understanding of the physical world, yet spent nights searching for supernatural realms beyond it. He stood beside the birth of modern science while carrying the soul of a medieval mystic. He was a man between worlds. To understand why Dee remains so fascinating, one must first understand the age he lived in. The 16th century was not merely a time of political change. It was a time when reality itself seemed unstable. Europe stood at the edge of transformation. Ancient religious authority was collapsing under the force of the Protestant Reformation. Explorers crossed oceans and discovered lands previously unknown to Europeans. Printing presses spread ideas faster than ever before. New scientific discoveries challenged beliefs that had dominated for centuries. The old world was dying. The new world had not fully arrived. In such an era, people desperately searched for certainty. Some searched through religion, others through science. John Dee searched through both. That was his greatest contradiction. Modern society often imagines science and mysticism as total opposites, but during the Renaissance, many intellectuals believed they belonged together. Mathematics revealed divine order. Astronomy revealed God's structure for the cosmos. Alchemy explored transformation hidden within nature. Mysticism promised access to spiritual truths beyond ordinary perception. Dee embraced all of it completely. To him, knowledge formed a sacred unity. Every number carried meaning. Every star reflected heavenly design. Every ancient text might contain forgotten wisdom from humanity's earliest days. This belief drove him endlessly forward. It also destroyed him. Perhaps no part of Dee's life symbolizes this conflict more powerfully than his partnership with Edward Kelly. Even centuries later, historians debate what truly happened between them. Was Kelly a fraud manipulating a brilliant but overly trusting scholar? Was he mentally unstable? Did both men genuinely believe they communicated with supernatural beings? Or did intense religious faith combined with isolation and obsession create experiences that felt completely real to them? The truth may never be known. But Dee's surviving journals reveal something unmistakable. He believed. Not casually. Not half-heartedly. Completely. That sincerity makes his story tragic rather than merely bizarre. John Dee was not simply playing with occult rituals for entertainment. He truly thought humanity had lost sacred knowledge and that God had chosen him to help restore it. Imagine the psychological burden of such belief. For decades, Dee sacrificed comfort, reputation, relationships, and financial stability pursuing divine truth. He endured ridicule, suspicion, and loneliness because he believed the search mattered more than ordinary life. And in the end, he died uncertain whether his revelations had been genuine at all. That uncertainty haunts his legacy. Yet despite his failures, Dee's influence on history remained enormous. His work in navigation and cartography helped support England's emergence as a global maritime power. His mathematical writings educated generations of scholars. His ideas about empire influenced English expansionist thinking long before the British Empire reached its height. Even his library left a profound impact. Though much of it was destroyed or scattered, Dee's collection represented one of the greatest centers of learning in Tudor England. Scholars visited Mortlake because knowledge gathered there could scarcely be found elsewhere. In many ways, Dee embodied the Renaissance ideal of universal learning. Today, academic specialization divides subjects into separate categories. Scientists rarely study theology deeply. Historians rarely practice mathematics professionally. Philosophers rarely pursue astronomy. But Dee attempted to understand everything. Mathematics, geography, astronomy, religion, alchemy, navigation, language, philosophy, politics, magic. His ambition was almost impossible in scale. And perhaps that is why he continues captivating people centuries later. Because John Dee represents something timeless within human nature. The refusal to accept limits on knowledge. Modern psychologists, historians, and occult scholars continue interpreting his life differently. Some view him as an early scientist trapped in a superstitious age. Others see him as dangerously delusional. Occult practitioners often regard him as one of history's greatest ceremonial magicians. Writers portray him as everything from tragic hero to sinister sorcerer. No interpretation fully captures him. And maybe none ever can. Even the mysterious Enochian language continues generating fascination today. Linguists debate whether the language possesses genuine structure or simply resembles mystical invention. Occultists still perform rituals based on Dee's angelic records. Researchers analyze the journal searching for hidden patterns or coded meanings. The system refuses to disappear. Just like the man who created it. Certain artifacts connected to Dee survive into the modern world almost like ghosts from another age. The black obsidian mirror. The crystal stones. Wax seals covered in strange symbols. Ancient manuscripts filled with angelic alphabets. Visitors viewing these objects often feel something unusual, not necessarily supernatural fear, but awareness that they belong to a man who spent his life reaching beyond ordinary reality. That reach defines Dee more than anything else. He reached toward heaven through mathematics, toward truth through magic, toward power through knowledge, toward eternity through forbidden questions. And although he never achieved the divine certainty he sought, his search itself became immortal. Perhaps that is why filmmakers, novelists, historians, and conspiracy theorists continue returning to him repeatedly. His life contains every element of myth. Royal courts, secret symbols, ancient books, lost knowledge, angels, magic, science, madness, betrayal, prophecy. Few real human beings ever lived stories so dramatic. Yet beneath the legend stood a lonely man driven by unbearable curiosity. A man staring at the stars, convinced they contained messages waiting to be understood. A man kneeling in dark rooms, praying voices from heaven would answer him. A man terrified that reality might contain mysteries far greater than humanity could comprehend. In the end, perhaps the most important question about John Dee is not whether he truly spoke with angels. The more important question is why humanity remains fascinated by the possibility that he did. Because deep inside human nature lives a desire older than civilization itself. The hope that we are not alone. The hope that hidden wisdom exists somewhere beyond the visible world. The hope that someone, somewhere, has touched the edge of the unknown and returned with answers. John Dee spent his entire life chasing those answers. He never stopped. Not through humiliation. Not through poverty. Not through scandal or fear or heartbreak. Until his final days, the old magus continued searching the shadows between science and spirit, reason and faith, heaven and earth. And that is why history never forgot him. For John Dee was more than a scholar. More than a magician. More than a servant of queens. He became a symbol of humanity's endless hunger to uncover the secrets of the universe itself. A man standing alone at the doorway between worlds, listening for voices in the dark.